Okay, tonight I want to get into a topic that I think we can all relate to. Over the last few years, we've seen a dramatic uptick in client engagement focused on one core theme. Market strategy is broken, and it's not for lack of data, budget, although we're all tightening our belts, or ambition. It's because companies are trying to grow without truly understanding their growth model, their customer segments, or whether their pricing strategy even reflects the value that they provide. So, in this particular episode, I want to break down three of the most critical and often neglected pillars of growth strategy: customer segmentation and pricing strategy. And we're going to ground this conversation, as we usually do, in real world, current, or as current as I can possibly find, examples from companies you know, not hypotheticals, no fluff. So let's jump in. Let's start with a growth strategy. Now, growth isn't just about doing more, okay? It's about doing what works in the right place, most importantly, at the right time. Now, let's take Slack as a case study. Before even being acquired by Salesforce, Slack scaled like wildfire, largely due to bottom up growth. They didn't go after enterprise contracts. They focused on small teams and then grew organically as those teams invited others. But here's what's interesting: when Slack tried to push into enterprise, it struggled. Why? Because their growth strategy didn't fully align with how, let's say, procurement and IT made decisions at an enterprise level. Microsoft Teams took full advantage by bundling into Office 365. Now, Slack had a growth strategy, but it hadn't fully adopted into the new segment. Contrast with HubSpot, they started as a small business inbound marketing tool, right? You've all heard of HubSpot. But as they matured, they built an ecosystem adding sales, service, and operational hubs. Then they intentionally created an upmarket strategy, building their operational capacity and features that made them competitive in the mid market and enterprise space. Growth by design. Some of the takeaways. If you're using the same growth playbook that you use at every stage of your business or for every customer type, you're going to miss. Growth strategy might tightly be coupled with maturity, target customer behavior, and channel performance. Otherwise, you're scaling friction. Now, let's talk about segmentation for a second. I'm not going to talk about B2B versus B2C or enterprise versus SMB or small and medium business. That's really, frankly, surface level. True segmentation is about value, perception, needs, and behavioral pattern. And when it's missing, everything breaks down. Let's look at Peloton. During the pandemic, they experienced massive growth, as we all know, but their segmentation wasn't mature. They had affluent early adopters, fitness enthusiasts, and casual users all thrown into the same funnel. When the boom ended, or when the pandemic somewhat died down, they had no clear path for upselling or for re engaging that broader base. Subscriber churn increased. Now they're scrambling to reposition and partner with platforms like YouTube to recapture fragmented segments. Now let's look at Netflix for a second. Some of you may feel some kind of way, one way or the other, about this example, and I understand, but it's important for me to explain this. Now, Netflix originally treated all viewers as one audience for $9.99, I believe it was, for unlimited content. Now, you probably remember it. I know I do. But as churn increased and margins continued to tighten, they decided to segment, add tolerant, budget friendly users, mid tier, casual users, premium households that share accounts, right? This allowed them to introduce ad supported tiers and crack down on password sharing. I know, which is what some of you may still be salty about, but that's okay. I totally understand. And this strategy actually set Netflix up with a clear upsell path. Churn did drop, And the ARPU rose, the average revenue per user. From a business model perspective, which is all we're focusing on here, they did the right thing for the business. Now, consider Airbnb. When they introduced categories like design, tiny homes, luxury, they weren't just improving their user experience, right? They were depending on segmentation to boost relevance and pricing precision. Companies that beyond demographic or account size are just guessing. And if you're just guessing, you're bleeding efficiency and margin. For the one everyone avoids, pricing. Pricing is often the last thing to change and usually the most emotional, frankly. Now let's look at Adobe. Years ago, Adobe moved from a perpetual license model to a SaaS subscription model. Creative professionals were furious, even some business professionals, actually. And maybe they still are. But over time, Adobe provided the value of ongoing updates, cloud access, and bundled tools. Their revenue model evolved to reflect the value customers were actually receiving. And because they segmented effectively, students, pros, entrepreneurs, they priced accordingly. That decision made them one of the most financially successful software pivots of the last decade. Now, just to pause and put things into perspective, since we as humans usually dislike change, imagine life without these companies. What would we do? And yes, there will always be a new player entering every single market. But if these companies didn't make these strategic moves that I just mentioned, we would not have them today. Now let's run through a few more examples, okay? Another great example I think is Spotify. Spotify runs constant pricing experiments in some markets. These test family plans, duo plans, student discounts, all priced relative to the value perception and willingness to pay. They've even adjusted pricing based on how likely churn is in a specific demographic. And the last one here. Now, let's look at Zoom. Zoom, which surged during the pandemic, prices still, or did price like it was still 2020. Despite new enterprise features and integrations, their pricing hasn't evolved enough to justify their higher tiers. Customers are questioning value. Competitors like Microsoft Teams are offering more for less. So, what's the lesson? Your pricing needs to evolve with your product, your market, and your customer segment. Otherwise, your growth will be stagnant even if your user is strong. So, if you're sitting in a strategy meeting trying to figure out why growth feels flat or why customers aren't converting or renewing, it's time to stop asking, how do we grow? And start asking, do we know who our best customers really are by behavior, not just by industry? But be realistic. Who you want your customers to be, but who they actually are. Do you understand which customers are more likely to expand, not just say, meaning upsell or buy more, try new features, or use your product or service to its max? Is your pricing aligned with different market segment value, or are you leaving money on the table? And let me leave you with this. Growth strategy without segmentation is just noise. Segmentation without pricing alignment is a missed opportunity. And pricing without behavioral data is a gamble. Now, companies that want to win long term, they align all three of those things with intention. If your team is struggling with this, and let's be honest, many are, you're actually not alone, but continuing to guess your way forward is expensive. We help executives solve this problem by design. And if you want to get to the root of your stagnation, fix your segmentation, and price for value, reach out. I'll see you next time.